think who you think is going to win, and Colo the mastermind, we are going to see his composition come into play.
Look at the calls from Method Black. They saw this coming.
Yeah, Method Black knew exactly what was coming their way, and they read the situation perfectly, bringing in Raikou on the Frost Mage, Swapsy on the Elemental Shaman, and Chaz on the Restoration Druid. I feel like Method Black definitely won this blind pick.
Yeah, this is a bit of a mind game. So Method Black were anticipating Wildcard Gaming to run the composition that Colo ran in North America and tried to counterpick that in a blind attempt. And I would say that they do have the upper hand in that regard, especially since the Bonded Souls changes. This Death Knight Zeepai is going to have a difficult time staying in on top of his opponent before getting bursted down. And we do currently see Wildcard Gaming maybe reassessing their strategy. I'm sure that they prepared for a Demon Hunter Death Knight, not necessarily a Frost Mage or Elemental Shaman. So likely they want to play for a bit of a different strategy than the all-out aggression we saw from Colo's team.
Yeah, definitely. Raikou in the midfield. He's just dropping some Blizzards, Frozen Orbs, trying to keep Zeepai and Blizzo at bay. And I gotta agree with you, Seth. I feel like Wildcard Gaming, they're trying to just assess the situation at this point. What are they gonna do? Are they looking for an all-in tactic later on in Dampening, where they could potentially overrun some of that healing Chaz has available? Are they just going to do these grip setups onto Swapsy? You can see he gets grips in and do an Asphyxiate stun, and that's an opportunity for Wildcard Gaming to get some burst down. But I feel like until a little bit later on in the game, Swapsy's going to be feeling quite healthy, especially with Chaz throwing out the Thorns, in a great position to just keep him alive. And Swapsy's really not afraid to get in the face of his opponent, especially on that Elemental Shaman. He's going to be very durable and not too scared from these grip attempts from Wildcard Gaming.
You see Zeepai and Blizzo pushing towards center field, maybe a bit reluctantly, as they realize, all right, that's not where our advantage lies. Let's just go back to the pillar, wait for Death Grip, and then make another attempt later on. The difficulty with that is that Chaz will almost always have an answer defensively to trade for these Death Grip exchanges, and then Raikou can place a Frozen Orb, snaring up the targets and freely attack while Swapsy tries to retreat to midfield, getting Ring of Peace back into the team. They're going for a Maledict play, trying to take Swapsy out, but with Polymorphs timed, they managed to break it up and remove any sort of potential there from the team of Wildcard Gaming. Looney needs to basically do his best to maintain his mana deeper into Dampening so that he can access Way of the Crane, and it's going to be needed, I think, and I want to see a triple Gladiator's Maledict push onto Raikou or Swapsy, all three members on the team of Wildcard Gaming attacking as one unit with that Way of the Crane, focusing on disrupting any incoming crowd control onto Looney and get him open. Finally, some pressure onto Raikou, but with Temporal Shield soaking all of that damage, it will heal him back up easily. Swapsy going after Blizzo. Looney makes a trade, and he's playing much more efficiently, just using Life Cocoon to exchange for Stormkeeper rather than waiting and expending his mana. So Looney is just using cooldowns to save mana, definitely knows his win condition deeper into Dampening.
Yeah, what I would like to actually see from Looney during these grip attempts from Zeepai and Blizzo is him push in, get incapacitated into leg sweep onto Chaz. There's not that much of a threat. I feel like at this point, Blizzo and Zeepai, they're going to be feeling healthy. I don't think there's too much of a risk to that strategy. And then if they implement the triple Maledicts with that a little bit of additional crowd control, they might be able to actually take someone down. But Chaz doesn't have a trinket at this point. This is a potential opportunity for Wildcard Gaming to make a very offensive push onto Swapsy, potentially get that Astral Shift, or even take him down if they do decide to go with that triple Maledict strategy. It's definitely a lot of healing that get absorbed, and it's sort of the X factor in this game to close it out early.
Raikou has been just trying to max out his damage while Swapsy throws himself at his opponents. Raikou free casting is obviously a lot more dangerous than the Elemental Shaman. The Elemental Shaman is just all about big punches during small windows, not about consistent pressure, whereas the Frost Mage needs to be getting lots of Frost Bolts to generate damage. Looney getting polymorphed. Good play by Raikou. Swapsy maybe look for a Thunderstorm to punt Zeepai out into midfield. Could definitely be a good way for Swapsy to get this melee cleave off of the pillar for Raikou to tee off on. Raikou dropping another Frozen Orb. Good combo with the Lightning Lasso. Swapsy trying to duck around the corner to prevent an interrupt, but Zeepai was there and secured it. Chaz making sure that he's ready for the late game, sitting down for a drink and regenerating mana to be on par with Looney. And this is just one of those matchups. If you're a melee cleave when facing a Frost Mage, the snares are so strong that you can't move. So your only option is to go in big pushes when you're immune to snares, have all of your cooldowns up and your damage is maximized, and then during that 5 to 10 second window, try to really push for a major cooldown and then immediately retreat away. It's basically your only option at the highest level of play in this matchup.
Yeah, I really like what Raikou has done as well. He's opted to take that build we saw from Alec earlier on in this tournament, last week, where he's focusing really on a lot of instant cast damage. He's decided to drop his water elemental for Lonely Winter. That's going to give him increased ice lance damage, and then he's basically focused all his Azerite traits with Packed Ice and Whiteout to increase his ice lance damage. So just a very durable tank. You're going to be able to get out a lot of instant cast damage with the Blizzard, with the Frozen Orb. Anytime he gets those Fingers of Frost procs, I think it's going to be a lot more difficult for Blizzo and Zeepai to shut his damage down.
Blizzo and Zeepai making a push to midfield, but only as 2 members. Nice Ursul's Vortex pulling Blizzo back into the fight. Frozen Orb snaring them all. It looks like they're focusing heavily on crowd control on Zeepai and attacking Blizzo. I think this is a wise move before deeper dampening where Death Strike is less effective, and Blizzo may need to be careful if he gets bursted down. He could easily fall, actually exchanging Touch of Karma a little bit prematurely, deciding to trinket and wanting to get aggressive. I mean, if they go with Way of the Crane on this push, it definitely could force an ice block, but Looney's caught in a hex. Lightning Lasso denies Blizzo from being able to connect. Raikou is able to kite to safety, and now, without Touch of Karma available for another minute and 10 seconds, Blizzo needs to avoid dangerous situations. Still just charging headlong in. This is going to be pretty risky.
Yeah, it definitely could be a little bit risky, but you have to start getting through those defensive cooldowns as a melee cleave. For Zeepai and Blizzo, they basically have 2 main objectives in this matchup to start forcing out major defensive cooldowns. They have to get through the Temporal Shield, which they have just done, as well as the Iron Bark. If they can get the Ice Block in addition to those 2, that's going to be a huge victory. But once the Iron Bark fades, once the Temporal Shield fades, this is where Blizzo, Zeepai, Looney, they need to be pushing in and can potentially easily force out the Ice Block from Raikou. Raikou, as a response, is actually going to use his Icy Veins. He wants to try to get some counter pressure rolling, but it was into the Way of the Crane of Looney and not going to be able to get that much effective damage out.
Looney waited for that window with no Iron Bark and Temporal, tried to make a push with the Way of the Crane and didn't get an Ice Block, and that's devastating. That was definitely their first objective and their first big push. It does net them a significant amount of mana, at least from Chaz, and they definitely can win in that regard since the recent changes to focus growth, but they need to deny Chaz from drinking later on in the fight to prevent him from regenerating that. Raikou topped off. Chaz looking for Cyclones a lot, and I actually think that's the main reason he is running so low on mana, but maybe it's just better for him to disrupt the damage rather than try and heal it back later on. He needs to consider going for a drink. I want to see Zeepai sending that ghoul pet with that red laser attached to it to chase Chaz around the map and prevent him from dropping combat and sitting down to regenerate mana. Chaz realizes the ghoul is chasing him, maybe looking to Entangling Root it, try and run behind the pillar. Pressure is on to Blizzo, and definitely before Dampening, I would favor Method Black, but deeper into Dampening, if the team of Wildcard Gaming can make a coordinated assault, I definitely think they can overcome that disadvantage. They've set themselves up pretty well. They've got a significant mana lead, and as long as they can coordinate, I think Wildcard Gaming have got this.
Yeah, Raikou, good backup there from Swapsy with that Traveling Storms, is going to be able to use Thunderstorm on Raikou, knocking both Blizzo and Zeepai away, allowing Raikou to basically free cast for a moment. Raikou gets gripped in into a leg sweep. Good amounts of damage, but Zeepai's not there to really coordinate an assault. He needs to try to slow down Chaz as he was trying to sneak off for a drink. And at this point, like you kind of mentioned, Wildcard Gaming, they have a massive mana lead. And Chaz, if he's unable to drink, that's definitely a huge win condition for Wildcard Gaming at this point, Dampening.
All right, Raikou, this is the Temporal Shield, and they're still kind of crunching through it. It will pop him back to full. Chaz is totally tapped on mana, so Zeepai's main focus should be denying the drinks, keeping the damage up, and they can actually just win off sustain. I'm not even sure if they need to coordinate together if they can maintain this mana advantage. Blizzo gets bursted down, bit disrespectful, but Raikou decides to abandon the mission and try and polymorph him. Now going for a Lightning Lasso, but it's 3 members of Wildcard Gaming in the face of Raikou. Is Chaz able to regenerate mana amidst all of this chaos is the real question. No. Raikou falls even further behind. Swapsy in desperation hexes up the Death Knight and ends up breaking to the cleave damage of Raikou, and Method Black are, I believe, starting to fall apart. Here's the Way of the Crane. Big push for Looney. They need to net an Ice Block off this. They've only got a couple of seconds to do it with that Temporal Shield. About to heal Raikou. He blinks away, gets stabilized, but Chaz still has no mana. Looney still in hot pursuit, just trying to add whatever extra damage that he can. But Blizzo is also taking some counter-aggression out in midfield and may need to abandon the push.
Yep, and this is the kind of counter pressure that we want to see from Method Black. Blizzo's still not out of it yet, as he gets behind the pillar. Not connected with Looney, though. He's going to have to keep himself alive with these Vivifies. does manage to do so for now, but that's exactly what we wanted to see from Method Black. They have to make sure Zeepai, Looney, Blizzo, they're a little bit scared to sort of chase down Raikou for these extended periods of time. Chaz did manage to sit down, get a little bit of mana back by drinking, and now actually has a little bit of a lead over Looney. Blizzo's potentially just going to be a little bit scared here until he has that Touch of Karma, which has just come back up, and now opting to make an offensive push once again, but they still haven't managed to get a single ice block from Raikou in this game.
All right, Touch of Karma exchanges during Touch of Death. This is a good combo of burst potentially for Blizzo to get an ice block. They really want to pull it from this, but they're just not finding enough damage, and now Looney's mana is equalized with Chaz. This match is being turned on its head as Method Black are now securing a significant lead, and deeper in Dampening, the Death Knight's a lot more vulnerable. Swapsy realizing that, immediately looking for Lightning Lasso. Icebound Fortitude breaks down out of that crowd control and prevents the damage, but Zeepai is still low on health. Looney's locked down in crowd control, and the lead that they built is all but evaporated at this point at 33% Dampening. They still need to get through 2 ice blocks. They're desperately trying to do so. Raikou tries to kite, but ultimately Zeepai connects, and they're going to get an ice block. Wildcard Gaming keeping themselves in the fight.
Yeah, definitely getting through one of those ice blocks is ultra important in this matchup, but Raikou will have one left once that hypothermia debuff does fade off of Raikou, preventing him from ice blocking. He's got about 20 seconds left, but I think Raikou should be able to hold on, especially with this Iron Bark coming in from Chaz. Blizzo in midfield taking a bit of burst damage. Swapsy trying to get some counter pressure rolling for his team. Raikou still just tanking a lot of this burst. Frozen Orb, Blizzard going to be dropped out by Raikou. Looney pushing in, wants to try to close out this game, potentially get the second ice block with this Way of the Crane, but that could be it for Wildcard Gaming. This could be their last offensive push. Full Polymorph secured by Raikou onto Looney. Blizzo forced to run away, and that is not the position you want to be in as Wildcard Gaming. You're going to allow Chaz to reset his Iron Bark. He's going to be feeling healthy. Swapsy not afraid at all. He's going to be pushing in, looking for a Lightning Lasso, forcing out the Touch of Karma from Blizzo. And now Wildcard Gaming, they're in a world of trouble.
They switched to Swapsy as he was overextended and managed to pull out Astral Shift. Now Method Black needs to be aware of that with 2 targets vulnerable and little mana left on Chaz. Switching targets definitely an effective strategy. Blizzo's getting bursted, desperately needs to escape to safety. Trying to pick himself back up with Vivifies as Looney is basically tapped, but now in Dampening, Method Black can switch their attention to Zeepai and burst him down with Stormkeeper Channel. These lightning bolts could hit huge onto Zeepai. Swapsy looking to take him down here in game number 1. Anti-Magic Shield denies the kill. Swapsy kiting and baiting Zeepai out of position. Zeepai realizing this, doesn't want to overextend too far, although Swapsy actually just moving forward as well with the team looking for defensive hexes. We've seen Hex almost exclusively used on Zeepai to slow down damage and to combine with that Lightning Lasso. Zeepai knows the threat of that Lightning Lasso, trinkets out of Hex and interrupts it. Good disruption on his part. Touch of Death is rolling as the team of Wildcard Gaming make a big push. This could be it for Swapsy. That swap earlier on definitely made him an open target here. He's kiting back to center field, able to avoid death, but for how much longer? There's 0 mana left on either side.
Yeah, Raikou trying to back him up with some good snares. Zeepai and Blizzo still all over him. Swapsy very vulnerable in this situation, but Zeepai could also fall. Needs to be careful. Full leg sweep onto Swapsy, incapacitate onto Chaz. Swapsy gets lower. Can they take him out? Full leg sweep on Chaz. Wildcard Gaming looking to close out game number 1. A great offensive push. Barely punishing Swap.
Are we going to see 2 games go to Wildcard Gaming and another reverse sweep happen? Are they going to be able to settle the score here and finally take down Method Black?
Yeah, Method Black was looking really good in that last game. There was just one offensive push from Swapsy that Wildcard Gaming was sort of able to punish and steamroll Method Black from that point forward. So what we really want to see is Raikou, Swapsy, make sure they're just doing as much consistent damage as possible, especially that late in Dampening. You really can punish Zeepai. You don't necessarily have to be chasing Blizzo around the pillar where you really make yourself a vulnerable target.
Some of the Azure trait changes more recently or within this patch for Mistweaver Monk were the Burst of Life, which now reduces Life Cocoon's cooldown by 20 seconds on top of its already effect of just providing extra healing. So having a 55-second cooldown Life Cocoon when taking the Honor Talent Chrysalis has definitely allowed Mistweavers to then enter the territory that was normally dominated by Restoration Druids. So with Iron Bark on a 45-second cooldown when talented into Stone Bark, you can then rotate Iron Bark for most of these stun lock attempts and burst windows. Now Mistweavers basically have the same trade as the Restoration Druid, which is making them a lot more viable. Now since the mana changes as well to Druid, we see Mistweaver rising up to the top. Wave Crane pushes deeper into Dampening are definitely very dangerous, so I'm glad that Looney is trying to experiment off more than what we've seen from him on just the Druid. Perhaps we see a shift in meta where Mistweavers become the most dominant healer after this tournament.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a possibility. The Mistweaver just seems really powerful right now, especially with that really low cooldown. Life Cocoon, 55 seconds. You can put up a huge shield on your teammates, and it allows you as a Mistweaver to fall a little bit behind and kind of rely on that really powerful cooldown to reserve a lot of your mana, because it isn't that mana intensive, so you can fall behind on healing, then use the Life Cocoon to catch it back up once again. It also gives you a really nice safety net if Blizzo and Zeepai, they want to push in, they want to get aggressive, and they don't really have too many defensives. Guess what? If Looney has the Life Cocoon, that's a great get-out-of-jail-free card for them to survive and continue an offensive push.
And even though Nourish was nerfed for Restoration Druid, I think when playing with a Mage, Elemental Shaman, a Warlock, these types of ranged spellcaster cleaves, it is still the go-to because it is such a big, powerful heal. You need to be able to interrupt that to kill a target through it. But when you're playing a melee cleave and you can't move against a Frost Mage, you already are going to have a hard time hitting your target, let alone interrupting the healer's big heal on Nourish and still hitting your target. And if you try to train the Druid and deny that Nourish, then you are going to take unhealable damage. So it's a bit of a checkmate decision by Chaz to run that talent. They've set themselves up quite effectively here on Ashamane's Fall. We see Wildcard Gaming employing a similar strategy as to what they did on the Grand, which before Dampening is stay at the pillar, line of sight their opponents, use Death Grip to pull a target into close quarters. There in that last attempt we saw Ring of Peace paired with it as well to knock Raikou further into enemy territory, but even still not enough damage to really get too much going. Chaz making sure to be max range. He can also just escape quite easily on this map and sit down for drinks. Looney getting swapped to here by Swapsy. I think the main goal for Method Black before Dampening is to try and tax Looney's mana as much as possible. One way to do that would be to use Purge or Spellsteal and try and remove the Renewing Mist, which is amplified by an Honor Talent Counteract Magic, which increases the healing of Renewing Mist by 135%. So if you just leave that Renewing Mist on a target that has Flame Shock, that target's basically taking no damage, especially when it's staying at a pillar the same way that Wildcard Gaming is right now. So perhaps Swapsy should be expending a tad bit more mana to try and remove off that Renewing Mist, and then Looney has to expend the mana to put it back up. This could be one way for Method Black to get a mana advantage before Dampening.
Yeah, and if you're not completely aware of how Mistweavers heal or where some of their healing comes from, you can see that sort of green beam that's being channeled onto Blizzo. That is the Serpent Jade statue, that green statue in the backfield where Looney has it placed. And basically when Looney uses his Soothing Mist on a target, that target will also receive a Soothing Mist from that statue, and it is significant healing, and it does cost no mana. So Looney can basically redirect that beam of light onto anyone he wants with just a quick channel of Soothing Mist, and then he gets a lot of free healing from that. And at this point in the game, if Zeepai, Blizzo, they're sitting behind the pillar, that statue is going to be more than enough to heal through just the Blizzard and Frozen Orb damage that Raikou really has available. In Wildcard Gaming, they seem like they know they're probably not going to be able to pull too many defensive cooldowns from Swapsy and Raikou until Dampening has kicked in. And we saw in the Grand Arena, they waited till around 10% to start making those offensive pushes, try to get through the Temporal Shield and the Iron Bark that Chaz has available. And at that point in the game, I expect once again Wildcard Gaming will start making an offensive push. And
I'm sure if you're sitting at home and you've done an Arathi Basin Battleground and against an Elemental Shaman, you are quite familiar, regrettably, with the ability Thunderstorm. Having myself been punted off the side of Lumbermill frequently, this is a powerful knockback for the Elemental Shaman. And when you take an honor talent called Traveling Storms, you can then cast Thunderstorm on your allies. And I like this honor talent adaptation by Swapsy, because if Swapsy gets Death Gripped in, he can Thunderstorm the enemy team off of himself. But unless he talents into Traveling Storms, they Death Grip Raikou in, he can't do the same, but now he can with that Honor Talent decision on his part. He was using it in game one. See, we hear Swapsy gets gripped into a stun, Thunderstorms Blizzo and Zeepai away, and effectively takes 0 damage. So Swapsy's Honor Talent usage there and the Thunderstorm knockback really denies a lot of any potential early game damage from the opposing team, and it's a wise move.
Yeah, definitely a wise move, and something you have to be careful of, especially as a Windwalker monk. If you summon your Storm, Earth, and Fire, you start channeling a Fist of Fury, and Swapsy just knocks you away from your target. All of a sudden, you lose out on all that burst damage that you would have available. So sometimes it's better to try to bait that out before you use the Storm, Earth, and Fire and commit some of your offensive cooldowns, or just get Swapsy to use it early on so you can actually have that uptime on the target that you need. Definitely really important for the melee cleaves to be looking at that. And now at 8% dampening, you can see Blizzo, Zeepai, they're going to start making an offensive push, potentially try to keep Chaz in combat for as long as possible. They realize at this point in the game, Chaz has full mana, Looney has full mana. It is likely that the Mistweaver will be able to hold on to that mana for a much longer period of time than the Restoration Druid. Chaz is likely at some point going to have to continually sneak away for drinks, and if they can shut that down, keep up the consistent pressure on Raikou, it's definitely a great strategy from Wildcard Gaming.
We saw in game number 1, it was 10% dampening that Looney decided to make his first push, and here in game number 2, that is the same case. So it's possible that they've been getting some war games in against Wizard Cleaves and finding the timings that are most fruitful to make a push. Here at 10%, they're likely trying to get Iron Bark and Temporal, then immediately after go for an Ice Block when dampening gets closer to 15 or 20%, but so far they're not finding it, and now Blizzo and Zeepai are under huge pressure from Swapsy. We do see Raikou as a primary target. Temporal Shield right before that incoming stun. Good timing on Raikou's part, denying basically that entire attack. Looney is still trying to give chase with that Way of the Crane, but now he's out in midfield. He's exposed himself to crowd control, but it may not matter. His damage is definitely very high at this point. Swapsy trying to support with a couple of healing surges and defensive hex play. We saw in game 1 Swapsy almost exclusively hexing the Death Knight, really trying to stall the game, and still is the case. I would say that Method Black, their offense is a little bit lackluster. They're attacking Zeepai maybe too much, not enough on Blizzo. They haven't really gotten through any major defensive cooldowns yet here in game number 2. Of course, that could be attributed to the overly defensive playstyle choice of Wildcard Gaming, but Method Black, it's not looking good for them right now.
Yeah, now Looney, with the Way of the Crane down and the Life Cocoon, he kind of used those as a safety bubble for his team to keep them aggressive and have high uptime on Raikou. But now that those have faded, I think it's time for Swapsy and Raikou to try to get a little bit aggressive. Raikou's still holding on to that Icy Veins for a rainy day. Once he uses that, I think it's likely that Wildcard Gaming will have to back off just a little bit in this matchup. But with Touch of Karma still available, Diffuse Magic available, Blizzo's going to be feeling healthy and confident to still push through and try to work through some of these defensives. Chaz has committed Iron Bark. After that, Raikou is going to be very vulnerable of a target. That's when I want to see Blizzo. He needs to commit the Touch of Death. If they commit Touch of Death, make a push with potentially Touch of Karma, they can get that Ice Block cooldown from Raikou quite easily.
Good crowd control by Swapsy as they now start focusing down Zeepai, and dampening, he will be a vulnerable target, but with Touch of Death activated, Blizzo is making a push. But how much longer can they stay in the deep end with dampening ramping up to critical mass? Perhaps enough to get an Ice Block. Stunlock combo on Chaz. Raikou gets bursted. Chaz gets interrupted on Nourish. Very important that Zeepai secured that interrupt on Nourish. Definitely the positioning of Method Black is falling apart. Chaz wants to be nowhere near any potential interrupt to access that Nourish ability, and it's going to cost them an Ice Block and put them behind.
Yeah, Swapsy actually trinketed as well, so now no trinket available. They can make a potential push on him as well. If they catch him in a leg sweep. Swapsy was the main kill target for Wildcard Gaming in the last game. Chaz's mana is not doing great. Looney does have a massive lead. Zeepai falling a little bit behind though. A full leg sweep onto Swapsy as they make an attempt on him. Zeepai trading out his anti-magic zone. He's going to be able to sit in that purple bubble you see on your screen. That's going to be preventing a lot of incoming magic damage, and as long as he's in that, he should be safe. Now that it's faded, Zeepai, Blizzo, they're feeling healthy, confident. They want to push onto Swapsy, potentially get that Astral Shift, but you can't leave Raikou open for too long. If he's able to just free cast Frostbolt, Blizzard, Frozen Orb, it's going to be very scary for Zeepai and Blizzo.
I like that Blizzo is running the Strengths in Numbers Azerite trait, so that when he takes damage, he has a chance to increase his maximum health. This is very important when facing an Elemental Shaman, which is only going to kill you with huge hitting Earth Shock. So if you can beef up your max health, reduce that kill potential, and the Elemental Shaman runs out of Maelstrom, you'll be at 1 HP, but 1 HP is more than 0, and then you can keep pushing and kill your opponent. So definitely focusing on maxing out your max health is a good idea. And Swapsy's build with Lava Shock, buffing his Earth Shock, he's all in on that build. And if they can't 100-0 somebody, their sustained pressure is much lower. I would still like to see them focusing down Raikou in this position. They've got Chaz locked down in crowd control. Looks like they're trying to swap, looking for an opportunity here. But with Chaz out in midfield, they're going to take a lot of damage for this push.
Yeah, they are, but Chaz could be in some trouble as he leaps away to the Water Elemental, gets gripped back. He could be in a lot of trouble. Triple Maledict, Touch of Death committed onto Chaz. He needs to be able to escape. Swapsy trying to help him out. Touch of Death could tick out. Chaz goes down. A nice swap by Wildcard Gaming. A great all-in position, and it always ends up being a reverse sweep. So Wildcard Gaming, are they going to trip on the finish line once again? Will they be able to do it? Only time will tell.
Yeah,
As somebody who's had a lot of nightmares in his life, I can only imagine what they're going through. Wildcard Gaming going to try to close it out here and make their dreams come true.
Yeah, day of deja vu when it's you always losing is definitely going to be terrifying and quite a nightmare indeed. Chaz early on exchange.
Is that a shot at me or them?
I'll leave that up to you, Rich. Swapsy in midfield. I really don't like them focusing Swapsy. I think the main objective here for Raikou is to stay on Looney and Mana Rift. So I guess if they polymorph Raikou and take a similar approach as we've seen Chanimal and Snuts did with their Mage Warlock, that could be one way. But they don't have access to Fear. I'm almost, well, I guess they don't actually have that option anymore now that Walrix isn't on the team. I almost kind of think that a good blind pick on Tovaron might be the Destruction Elemental Resto Druid or a Mage Destruction Resto Druid. It might just be one of the strongest comps for this map, whereas the Ellie Mage doesn't have as many diminishing returns of crowd control. Although I like this adaptation by Wildcard Gaming of, okay, Raikou's on Polymorph DR, so we'll just attack him. And then as soon as he's off of it, we'll start polymorphing and Frost Novaing him and basically making it as difficult as possible for Raikou to get to Looney so that they can have mana deeper into Dampening.
Yeah, definitely Swapsy taking some damage, but we've seen Death Knights be able to self-sustain quite a bit in matchups like these before. Both the Demon Hunter and the Death Knight, like we constantly talk about, they have a lot of self-healing, so normally Dampening is required to take them down unless you have something like the Mortal Wounds and Grapple Weapon on your team where you can really try to punish and push through a lot of that healing. Chaz caught in midfield, good damage from Morrow, as well as Zeepeye as they look to really punish, forcing out the Bark Skin and forcing Chaz to run away. That means he's not going to be able to be in a position where he can actually dispel Raikou, who sits now full polymorph, and that allows Looney to get away. So I think when Chaz pushes into the midfield to get some dispels onto Raikou to really free him up, that's when you punish him, force him to run away, and you can basically have at it with controlling Raikou.
One big Azerite trait every Havoc Demon Hunter should be looking out for. Although in the meantime, Raikou getting bursted quite heavily. They're on match point. They can't afford to throw here and now. Raikou stays alive. Quite a close call, though. Big damage by Zeepeye and Morrow. It's still continuing with Raikou held down at half, so rudely interrupting my analysis. Looney now getting bursted down. Come on, man. I just want to talk about Burning Soul. The Azerite trait that every Havoc Demon Hunter should have their eyes on and seeking to get 3 of whenever Consume Magic is used, basically removing. It's a purge effect similar to what Shamans have. Whenever you remove a beneficial magic effect, you gain an Absorb, and if you stack it 3 times, it's a very, very, very big Absorb, and that's one of the main reasons why Demon Hunters are able to extend matches so long. Although now Raikou getting bursted, he's overextended. I really like the strategy from Wildcard Gaming of polymorph Raikou when he's off DR, then attack and burst him when he isn't. It's really making it difficult for Chaz to heal as well because he has to shift his heal over time effects between 2 targets. He has to spend a lot of mana dispelling every time the diminishing return is over. The strategy from Wildcard Gaming is very well thought out.
Definitely, and looking at mana, once again, Method Black with this composition, they have a massive lead. Chaz has been able to sneak away, get a drink off. Looney has not had that same luxury. Now with no trinket available, Raikou once again landing another mana rift onto him. Looney already down to around 35% mana. If they can continue this push, Method Black, they're going to be looking really good in this matchup.
Yeah, Method Black, if they can keep getting mana rifts and not get caught off guard and bursted, should be looking solid, which is why I don't like the pick from Wildcard Game. Even though their strategy is definitely there, I think compositionally they're still outmatched as long as Method Black keep a level head in this tournament. Morrow getting stun locked on his Icy Veins. It's a bit unfortunate for him as he would like to be doing massive damage, but when in a stun, you're not doing massive damage. Zeepeye now getting bursted, activating Astral Shift in exchange and trying to rotate some pressure with that Stormkeeper, trying to go after Raikou. Not finding too much off the back end and then just immediately polymorphing Raikou to allow Looney to get away. Let's see how much mana Looney can ultimately get, because if he doesn't get any, it's looking quite grim for Wildcard Gaming here on game number 3, but he's been sitting down, I believe, for an extended period of time, unless he's been running across the map. He did regenerate significant mana, although having to trade Astral Shift on Zeepeye's part means that they could potentially kill him.
Yeah, they could potentially take Zeepeye down, a very vulnerable target. Looney exchanging a lot of Zeepeye's health. Basically crossing the entire map in stealth, trying to just find a position where he can get away from Method Black. He did manage to do so, like you pointed out. Sat down for a drink, recovered a lot of his mana. Now Wildcard Gaming isn't nearly as in a difficult, not in nearly as difficult of a situation here on this map. Once again, Method Black, Raikou, he's going to have to chase down Looney, look for the mana rifts. Looney just opting to trade out his trinket. He does not want to get caught into the stun mana rift, so every 2 minutes, when he has that available, he'll trade that out to just avoid some of that mana burn effect from Raikou. Maro taking a little bit of burst. Swapsy has been doing a great job keeping consistent pressure in this match on Maro and Zeepai, and that's really his job. He needs to make sure when Looney does manage to escape, he has a difficult decision. Is he going to sit down for a drink, or does he have to recover all the hit points that Maro and Zeepai have lost during the downtime?
Maro still low on health. Looney locked out of the fight and getting bursted as well. Mana slipping away for Wildcard Gaming. I would say this is looking more favorable for Method Black as time goes on. There was a bit of a close call for Raikou earlier, but that really hasn't created too much pressure. Maybe potentially here if they can manage to pull a Darkness or another walk. Those would be the main objectives to get away from Raikou, but not even finding it. I do like their strategy, but so far the composition that Method Black have brought, we've also seen Method Orange playing, is apparently bulletproof. I do think we will see Wildcard Gaming, if they should lose this game, go back to their Windwalker, Death Knight, Mistweaver, and I'm curious to see how that plays out, because right now this game is out of control for them.
Yeah, Wildcard Gaming, I think they got ahead of themselves once again, trying to bring in a potential counter comp, and it isn't over yet. I mean, Wildcard Gaming definitely has a shot, but things are seemingly going in Method Black's favor consistently in this matchup. There really hasn't been that much pressure onto them. Raikou got bursted down at one point in the match, but other than that, they've all been sitting at high HP. Chaz's mana is doing quite well. Swapsy's been getting out a lot of pressure. Things are looking good for Method Black. Wildcard Gaming, they need to stabilize, and normally for their composition against what Method Black has available, they need a little bit more dampening to push through some of that self-healing. So if they can get to that point, they might be able to overwhelm Method Black very quickly. Maro and Zeepai could potentially take someone down.
Yeah, let's see if they can do it. Can Wildcard Gaming stay alive until critical dampening to burst down either Swapsy or Raikou? So far, it's not looking too great with only 11% dampening and Looney at basically not anything left in terms of mana. It's really looking grim for them so far and throughout. There was only really one moment of opportunity, which didn't even ultimately get them any major cooldown objectives. We see the Druids trying to sneak away and regenerate. Is Raikou going to be able to deny? Looney did manage to get at least some mana in that exchange, and some is better than nothing if they want to try and win this deeper into dampening, just close the series out and advance to the grand finals. And then if you're the Chalky Milkman in the lower bracket, and I mean, if you're seeing either of these teams go down there, you're probably pretty afraid. I would say perhaps more so afraid of Method Black. I think this Demon Hunter Death Knight is a lot more difficult to deal with as a Cleave than the Windwalker Death Knight overall, at least with the composition that they're limited to on that Rogue Mage. But Sagella was on point yesterday. I'm very interested to see how he plays here later today. Inevitably going to be facing one of these teams, likely to be Method Black, with Wildcard Gaming having the lead, but often Method Black get inside their heads and manage to spin victory off the back of almost complete defeat. Maro getting bursted down, Ice Block out of the way. That's one major objective in favor of Method Black now, as well as the mana lead.
Yeah, definitely. Maro with one Ice Block down, a very vulnerable target. Looney is trying to get away, but he's falling behind on healing just a little bit. Maro looking for an Ebon Bolt. Big burst damage now onto Swapsy at 20% dampening. Things are going to start getting really intense for both of these healers. Chaz in midfield with that Moonkin affinity. I still think he's a decent swap target here for Wildcard Gaming. They can find some solid burst pressure if Zeepai can manage to get a Lightning Lasso on Chaz. Swapsy maybe realizing Chaz could be vulnerable, swapping over to Zeepai, making sure he's not going to be able to channel out that Lightning Lasso, kind of limiting the damage he's really able to do. Chaz, if he doesn't start sneaking away and looking for some drinks, his mana's not going to be doing too well, as he is down to around 20%. Even with Looney at this point, very surprisingly, and things are starting to look a little bit more favorable for Wildcard Gaming in this series.
Raikou jumping into the fight, denying Looney, and now turning up the pressure. Mana surprisingly evening out. Wildcard Gaming might be able to pull this off. Raikou getting crowd controlled. That was the Maledict attempt onto Looney. A little bit uncoordinated, so now Looney should be able to escape. I love these polymorphs on Raikou behind the box, out of line of sight of Chaz, so he cannot remove them, buying Looney even more time to just cross the map. I think the main goal potentially here for Wildcard Gaming is to drag Chaz into center field and then swap to him. That's why we see Zeepai going back and forth away from the adjacent pillar that Chaz would like to play at. Maro now getting bursted though. Pressure on the 3 targets. Dampening ramping up. No real openings in terms of cooldowns right now for Wildcard Gaming to get a kill, and they're just dying a very slow and painful death.
Yeah, Looney fell behind. He tried to catch up with his innervate, but good crowd control from Raikou shuts that down. Now Zeepai very vulnerable as he gets interrupted. Can Raikou get there for some damage as well? Swapsy trying to just solo him at this point. Chaz gets interrupted. Morrow doing everything he can, keep his team in this. But there's just no pressure for Wildcard Gaming whatsoever. Everyone's just sitting at full HP. Finally, a little bit of damage here on Swapsy with no Icebound Fortitude, no Anti-Magic Shell. For the first time in this game, Swapsy is actually forced to retreat off the back of the Icy Veins of Morrow. I really like that offensive cooldown timing from Morrow. His team was falling behind. They needed some sort of damage, so using the Icy Veins forced Swapsy to run away and bought Looney a little bit of time to actually regenerate some mana and keep his team alive.
It's looking like Method Black are going to take Game 3 and stay alive in this series, and our Wildcard Gaming choking on the finish line is now going to be the question if that ends up being the case. Looney basically has nothing left in the tank. All 3 members not topped off. Dampening just getting higher and higher. Looney doing his best to escape, but with that ghoul chasing him around from Swapsy, he's unable to drop combat. Imprison holds Looney at low health, allowing... What just happened to Raikou? What? They had every cooldown to exchange. They just completely disrespected Wildcard Gaming. Basically, the only way that they could have lost was to throw the game away, and that's exactly what happened.
Well, Wildcard Gaming can be happy with that throw. That is going to be able to close out the entire series for them, and this is something that we haven't seen them able to do very often. It looked like they made a mistake as well, but Method Black definitely made the bigger misstep here, and they're going to have to try to get a rematch because this one was a doozy. Wildcard Gaming going to take it 3-0. Black's compositions, you could see that they really didn't. They had so many compositions you couldn't even fit them all in the graphic, and really only one for the Chalky Milkman.
Well, I think a lot of people in the chat are probably voting for the compositions they wanted to see well, like the Rogue Mage Druid. Very exciting composition. Method Black, the composition they're running with the Mana Rift, it's a little bit slower paced, and I think people are maybe potentially voting because of that.
Yeah, could be the case. Definitely some Gelu fanboys in the chat. We do see pressure starting to develop for Method Black early on with 2 members of the Chalky Milkman low on health. Clyde needs to maintain both at the same time, opting to use Iron Bark to make his healing spells free of cost. But even with free-casted regrowth, Gelu is struggling to even recover. Clyde really having a hard time here in Game 1.
Yeah, definitely. Gelu could be in some trouble. No Iron Bark, no Temporal Shield. Those are the major check marks we want to see from a Cleave. Swapsy now into a kidney shot with the smoke bomb. Is there going to be any damage? Gelu activates his combustion, but Swapsy with the anti-magic shell should be able to easily survive. Now that he can get on target, he can easily heal himself up as well. Method Black's looking like they're in a good position.
Yeah, Method Black solidifying the advantage that we already talked about in the pre-game. I'm curious to see if Chalky Milkmen have any surprises. They have been targeting down Swapsy. They've managed to get the Gliders Medallion of Chaz, so maybe a swap to him, and that's exactly what Ashley looks to do. Cyclone on Swapsy to remove any of his defense, but even still with a perfectly timed swap onto Chaz out of bear form, they don't even dent him, and that's definitely going to be discouraging for the Chalky Milkman.
Yeah, Clyde already down to around 50% mana, even less than that at this point. He needs to keep his team alive. They need to find pressure, but Chaz is chasing him down. Hasn't really had to put out too much healing yet, so he can afford to just be chasing down Clyde, keeping him in combat, limiting his drinks. You can see Gelu pushing in. He gets the Pandaren Racial Quaking Palm onto Chaz into a potential Ring of Frost, and then make a swap onto Chaz. I feel like that was a bit of an overcommitment by Chalky Milkman, but you can't really blame them. Swapsy and Raikou have been taking no damage whatsoever. Chaz does manage to survive. He didn't have the Barkskin and Iron Bark, so they did manage to bait that out. Swapsy forced to use the anti-magic zone in response to Vendetta, but now Method Black, they're looking very healthy.
I mean, they set that up pretty well. They got the Gliders Medallion from Chaz, then they swapped, they got a Bark Skin, then they swapped again with Vendetta. But the problem with the composition that Method Black is running is they will always have an answer. So Swapsy on that 3rd swap has anti-magic zone. If they do a 4th, Raikou has Darkness. A 5th, they have Bark Skin again. A 6th, they have Gliders Medallion again. So this is why this composition is so bulletproof in terms of defense. The Chalky Milkmen basically have to overwhelm Chaz if they want to find victory, but that requires them to be playing aggressive and in the face of Method Black, which then maximizes the amount of damage they're taking, and they take a lot more.
Yeah, definitely. Gelu still struggling. He's controlling up both Swapsy and Raikou the best he can now, potentially even looking for a greater Pyroblast, but like we kind of talked about, Choccy and Raikou, they have a lot of different utility to slow down those long casted spells, and they should be able to stop most of these greater power blasts. Raikou realizing Clyde, he sat down for a drink at this point. He recovered a lot of mana. That was actually a big misplay by Method Black. They needed to watch out for Clyde. Him getting a drink is definitely scary. Big setup here onto Raikou, really punishing Raikou for chasing down Clyde. Chalky Milkman, excellently done. Now they set themselves up. Method Black, Raikou, he has no trinket. Chaz, no trinket. They can get one nice setup onto Raikou with potentially that Vendetta coming up. That's definitely a kill window for them.
Yeah, most certainly is. They've also got Smoke Bomb coming up in their back pocket as well. They have all of the tools to find victory right now to potentially take game 1 against Method Black, and they need to start preparing. Crowd control initiated. A little bit of a miscommunication. Gelu firing some fireballs at Chaz while Asho is attacking Raikou. Maybe they're trying to trip up Chaz by attacking him during this time, make him switch Life Bloom to himself, and then as soon as he switched Life Bloom, crowd control him and swap to Raikou in a Smoke Bomb. I could see that being an option for the Chalky Milkman. That at least appears to be what they're trying to do currently, but without Rupture activated on the Demon Hunter on the swap, the damage in the swap is going to be a lot lower and maybe not enough to ultimately take him down. They're running out of time. They got to do it quick. They pull the trigger. They do the Shadow Step Kidney Shot. They pop the Vendetta. They have to kill Raikou 100-0 in the stun. They don't manage to do so, and now with Darkness and Anti-Magic Zone, it's likely that Raikou survives, although very low on health. He's effectively immune to damage in those cooldowns, although deciding to leave early, getting Cycloned at low health. Can they get any more follow-up? Doesn't appear to be the case. Gelu trying his hardest to get a greater Pyro Blast or some crowd control off the back of the Quaking Palm. There has been opportunity knocking for the Chalky Milkman, but they just can't close.
Yeah, Raikou still has the blur if he really needs it as well, just really relying on that Metamorphosis self-healing. Gelu getting low, big damage. He still has the Cauterize to fall back on if he really needs to, but he needs to be careful. If Maledict flies in, it completely immunes it, and Gelu gets deleted. Exactly what I was afraid of happened.
Okay, Rich. The gates are now open. Welcome, everybody. We're in the lower brackets. Chalky Milkmen face elimination. They're just a 3-man squad here to have some fun. Fnobbers has been kind of ruining everyone's day with all the roster swaps that he has undergone throughout the tournament series, and this is one of the teams that have felt the pain of that. Now,
they're not trying to have fun. They're about to get to the grand final, dude. They're trying to win.
They have said that they are literally just playing for fun. They enjoy playing with each other on the ladder, and they play this Rogue Mage composition and basically nothing else. Potentially a team of just good friends playing for fun, like take down the Titaness Method Black. It would definitely be an accomplishment, but I'm not sold.
They're out for blood.
They're out for blood. Yeah. I bet you $20 Gelu is just smiling right now.
Yeah, I don't think this is a revenge match. Chaz now a kidney shot with the polymorph onto Swapsy. Clyde imprisoned. Gelu taking a little bit of pressure early on from Swapsy and Raikou. They need to continue this damage. He was the main takedown target in the last game. And I believe, I didn't exactly see it, but I think Gelu actually used his Ice Block a little bit aggressive there to try to actually push and land a kill onto Raikou, Swapsy, or Chaz in that last match. So potentially Gelu might have to play a little bit more defensive, but it doesn't seem to be the style of Chalky Milkman. They're not afraid to take risks, and I feel like that's something they need to do. They want to find a win condition in this matchup. They potentially do need to be using the Ice Block aggressively. Pandaren and Racial over the Dark Iron Dwarf. Just these little bits of extra offense could be what they need to actually secure a kill on the match.
Greater Pyroblast. Unfortunate for Gelu. Line of sighted right as he blinked forward to secure it. Crowd control lined up here as they are going for Chaz.
Whoa!
Huge damage out of nowhere by the Chalky Milkmen. Are they going to be able to do it? They're 1 second away. Chaz, he makes a bit of a mistake not renewing instantly. Why is he not using renewal? He re-talented for it. Now using it and staying alive. Almost a throw on the part of Method Black once again.
Chaz didn't use his Bark Skin or Iron Bark in that situation, just sitting at 5% health, 10% health, really relying on that Darkness from Raikou and the Anti-Magic Zone. So that was definitely a scary moment for Method Black in the matchup, but a lot of offense committed there by the Chalky Milkman. Now another
caught again
here onto Chaz. Could be in a lot of trouble. Activates the Bark Skin, but there's not the same kind of damage available for Gelu. Didn't have his Meteor, didn't have his Combustion, so Chaz is going to be feeling a little bit more healthy, a little bit more confident, actually still just chasing down Chaz. He wants to take him down. Chaz escaping, kiting away, should be just fine.
We'll say even though this is a one-sided matchup, either Method Black are overconfident or they're getting lazy. And this is going to be a long tournament rematch against Wildcard Gaming in the grand final. They can't afford to get overconfident. They definitely can't afford to get lazy. There is potential here for the Chalky Milkmen to exploit it, but so far Method Black are still establishing a lead.
I do want to bring up, too, remember how they did get here. I mean, it's off of the back of Raikou not trading out any of those major defensive cooldowns. Is that overconfidence showing not only in this series, but throughout the entirety of the day?
I mean, definitely a possibility. Not something we normally see from Method Black, but I mean, it could have potentially been a fatiguing Friday that has lasted until today, but everyone's human. Sometimes mistakes come in, even from a team like Method Black that we don't normally see. It could be an off day for them, but definitely need to smarten up a little bit. There's been a lot of close calls in this series so far, although claiming game number 1, Chalky Milkman have been finding a lot of openings.
Yep, but now Clyde is totally tapped on mana, and they go for a blind attempt. Who are they going to try and kill? Killing the Death Knight before Dampening? I don't think so. Swapsy takes no damage on that exchange. Chaz still has a lead. Clyde with Innervate catches a couple of free heals, maybe a moment to breathe. I think at this point you have to kill Chaz. You've got no other opportunity. If you can combine Vendetta and Combustion, remove Swapsy from the game with crowd control, maybe sneak in a greater Pyroblast and hope that they just choke and throw, you might be able to kill Chaz. They've set up good crowd control, but they don't have greater Pyroblast. Not able to get it.
Oh, he got it.
Did he get it? Is he going to get another? Not a second. And Ashley by himself is not enough damage. They don't even pull a Barkskin in that attempt. That would have at least been something. Some work for their trouble.
I don't know what happened there.
Where did G-Mike go?
I think he might have shadow melded it.
Okay.
He shadow melded it. That was a close call for Chaz, but reacting to the situation accordingly. When a greater Power Blast is coming towards you, it's a very scary moment. Does significant damage, percentage-based damage ability, so does 35% of your health. It doesn't matter if you're in bear form or in normal form, it's always going to do 35%. So it's very powerful against targets that do have large HP pools. Always going to be a very effective ability. It's just the problem with it is it's difficult to get off. Now another attempt here onto Chaz. He has the Barkskin and as well as Renewal, so it should be fine. Raikou with the Darkness, Swapsy anti-magic zone. Chaz is going to be feeling very healthy at this point in the game. Chalky Milkman, not a lot of openings for you. Clyde completely tapped on mana, but he does manage to sneak away, and Swapsy needs to be able to stop him. This is going to be disaster if Chalky Milkman can actually establish a mana lead. Unfortunately, they are unable to. Now, once again, Ashley, Gelu, they're looking for a kill onto Chaz. Anti-magic zone gets dropped out. Ashley committing a lot. The Vanish as well as the Vendetta, but looks like Chaz should be fine, and now Raikou and Swapsy can start really ripping into Gelu.
I mean, Chaz is being pressured and actually almost out of mana, but Ashley's basically going to have to solo Chaz. Is Chaz going to die to Ashley? I think it's unlikely, and then in the meantime, Clyde has to heal 3 members of the team with no mana. Healing 1 as a Druid is far easier than healing 3, as Life Plume is super effective at single target healing. Clyde is really struggling here. Gelu getting bursted, still has Ice Block, needs to be careful. Blocking at 1% health. Obviously, they are disadvantaged in the matchup, but they still want to give any opportunity that they can try and get. And perhaps if they can sneak themselves into the grand final, they still have 62 points to their name. They could definitely be more than an annoyance to the other teams, at least trying to get that 3rd and 4th spot to qualify for the spring finals. But slowly things are falling apart. Clyde sneaks away, wasn't able to get too much mana off the back end of this, and Dampening is certainly not deep enough for Swapsy to be an effective kill target just yet. I'm very surprised to not see them focus more on Raikou. We saw big openings when they focused him in game 1, but in game number 2, they're ignoring him. Gelu gets crushed under the weight of Method Black, defiantly trying to stay alive. Ursul's Vortex gets dropped. Gelu just casting greater Pyros, gets pulled back into the Vortex. Great timing there by Chaz, holding the mage in place for his Death Knight and Demon Hunter to have at the. Ashley is still low. Clyde's lucky here with Innervate available, has a couple of seconds of free healing, but even still with free healing is having a hard time just keeping his team alive. Clyde doing everything in his power to try and buy his team enough time for an opportunity, but I just don't see any.
Yeah, Chaz getting caught into the kidney shot, a little bit of damage onto him, but Gelu just really not able to commit enough damage in this setup. He still has a combustion. There's one more opportunity here for Gelu, but Chaz did hold on to the Barkskin. Once again, could be taken down. And after a long, valiant fight from the Chalky Milkman, Method Black, eventually, they just slowly win these games.
Unbeatable, but the Chalky Milkman, even in the face of that adversity, have made some potential situations where they could have come out on top. Really looking to game number 1 where we almost saw Raikou go down. The question is, can Chalky Milkman create a situation like that again? Are they going to be sent home right here, right now?
Yeah, definitely. Chalky Milkman going to have to basically take advantage of any openings Method Black gives them. Any mistakes, any misplays, that's where Chalky Milkman will really thrive. Now Raikou getting focused down, taking a decent amount of damage, but still has the blur available if he really needs it. Reverse magic was used onto Chaz, freeing him from crowd control. Now Gelu in a little bit of trouble. Temporal Shield gets used, will deflect a lot of this initial damage. One Maledict flying in from Chaz, as well as Raikou and Swapsy, a triple Maledict attempt there, and it doesn't look like it really will net them anything just yet. Gelu should be able to survive. Clyde easily heals him up.
All right, Ashley is playing it patiently, holding on to Vendetta and using that to bank a kill, but without accessing its extra damage. Obviously, every push is going to be almost non-threatening. We see Clyde gripped into a triple stun. Devastation for the team of Chalky Milkmen here as they are on match point and face elimination. This composition crafted by Method Black, powerful enough to take down gods, basically unbreakable aside from huge errors being made on their side. So I'm very curious to see if the Chalky Milkmen can overcome this Titaness composition or if they will just be simply washed away by its power. Clyde gripped into midfield once again, able to avoid any incoming stuns and get to safety. Chalky Milkmen have set themselves up well on this map to sit down for drinks, but Clyde is either going to have a Demon Hunter chasing him or a Fiendish Ghoul chasing him. He's entangling roots onto the Ghoul to try and escape, and Raikou says, okay, well, it's my turn to tag in to deny Clyde from drinking, and so long as Clyde is prevented from regenerating mana, Method Black will have Chalky Milkman in a chokehold.
And Gelu, in my opinion, has been a great adaptation in this game, deciding to drop the Greater Power Blast. We saw in the last game, Greater Power Blast, Mind Freeze, Greater Power Blast, Grip, Greater Power Blast, Imprisonment. There's just so many little micro stops, little interrupts by Raikou and Swapsy in these matchups that Gelu really can't get effective use out of that talent, so opting to go with the Fire Starter instead. So he can use his Combustion, and then every time he uses his Fireball, 5 seconds will come off the cooldown of that Combustion, allowing him to get that instant cast burst off a lot more frequently and potentially push through some of those defensives Method Black has.
Gelu pulling back, looking to crowd control the DPS members to maybe bait Chaz out in the midfield for a swap again. It's basically Raikou and Chaz are the only targets I think that can go down in this matchup, unless for some miracle reason Chalky Milkman can make it to 30 or 40% dampening, and then perhaps Swapsy can go down. Gelu gets bursted, Clyde responds, but exchanges a huge amount of mana just to simply stay alive. Maledict attempt here by Method Black. This could be a cauterize if all 3 members can coordinate together. Only committing 1 so far, maybe a bit of a misfire there on the part of Method Black. Chaz sitting through a blind. If you can sit through a blind sap, then that is really bad manner almost on the side of Method Black. He's comfortably sitting through that. There's basically no damage. Ashley's crowd control chaining throughout and then swapping at the end of it. With a Combustion Meteor, maybe an opportunity. Maledict flies in. If they don't kill Chaz 100-0 though, I doubt that they will ever do so. Another Maledict. Chaz Shadow Melts, I believe, able to avoid now that near-death experience with Ashley gripped away. Chaz breathing at the pillar comfortably. Clyde's mana really not looking good, but I mean, at least Chaz is in almost a similar boat.
I wouldn't agree with that statement whatsoever. I think Chaz's mana is doing a lot better, and I think it's going to last a lot longer because Raikou and Swapsy can keep themselves alive with the amount of self-healing that they have. Gelu now potentially looking for some crowd control, finds the Dragon's Breath onto Chaz, but unfortunately, because Chaz was in travel form, there's going to be no follow-up polymorph from Gelu. Still looking to catch potentially Chaz out of form, but Chaz not falling for it, retreats to the pillar, keeps Clyde in combat. And now it's really going to be up to Method Black. They're playing into their win condition. They get Clyde out of mana. He's trying to drink. They need to be able to slow it down, but they also have to start getting pressure here onto Ashley, onto Gelu. And Clyde actually sneaks away. He's getting a lot of mana. And Sid, this might be the mana lead we were looking for from the Chalky Milkman.
Yeah, Clyde doing his best, but I don't believe was able to get really anything off the back of that attempt. And now the Chalky Milkmen, what are they going to do? I think they're all out of milk at this point. They've got no mana to keep healing. Ashley's stun locked. 3 members are dipping low, and Clyde doesn't have anything to trade for it. Gelu's just trying to polymorph DPS members, slow the pace of the game, allow more opportunities. Any chance that they can get, they're trying trying to battle to take, but now Maledicts are flying in, multiple towards Gelu. The Abomination has entered the battle with Swapsy leading the charge. That's going to boost his damage immensely. Gelu just goes for it, pops the Combust, tries to get a kill, but not finding any damage. Chaz breaks out of the crowd control, easily healing his team. Gelu has to block. He comes out of it and says, whatever, man, I'm going to go for a kill, I guess. They've got nothing left. It's do or die. They have to make a mistake at this point to end up going down, but Gelu's trying to get as much damage squeaked in here for their final push as possible.
Yeah, Raikou charges over. Gelu, nothing left in the tank. Cauterized procs. Glad trying to keep him alive. Temporal Shield might buy Gelu a little bit of time here. Raikou, Swapsy still putting out good pressure here onto Ashley. But in that last exchange, Raikou managed to hold on to every single one of his defensives. He didn't give Chalky Milkman even an inch in this matchup. And Method Black easily clean sweeps Chalky Milkman.
Oh, man. We are going to see our analysts be 100% correct on what is going to be broken out here in the blind pick.
Yeah, I think Method Black, they have to put their best foot forward, see what happens, let the chips fall where they may, and really challenge Wildcard Gaming here, who is going to be the ultimate cleaver. Looney getting gripped in already into a mana rift, Swapsy taking a little bit of pressure, and that's going to be the main strategy from Wildcard Gaming, likely going after Swapsy, denying him with this grapple weapon, which we see is already one of the talent choices one of these monks has picked up.
But with that Restoration Druid, if you're not switching targets, Life Bloom on Swapsy is very powerful at healing through single target damage, and I don't think it's going to be as effective as Kolo running this grapple weapon strategy versus Sidu's Restoration Shaman. So at some point, Wildcard Gaming are going to have to potentially go after Chaz, and this is why I was surprised to not see Method Black just play this composition much earlier on in their series. I think that they are actually favored. It's Wildcard Gaming that are on a clock. Once again, a good crowd control attempt here on Chaz to gun down for Swapsy, but not finding enough damage. And Blizzo has been really taking a ton of damage throughout this, having burned through most of his personal defensive lineup. And now they managed to get Chaz into the fight, and this is what they need to do, is go after the Restoration Druid. We saw that succeed against Sidu. Will Chaz fall in game one?
Yeah, he definitely could, in a little bit of trouble as he gets rooted. Nicely done there by Blizzo, keeping him rooted up there as Chaz tries to escape. Blizzo and Zeepai still all over him. Swapsy and Raikou, they're going to have to try to back him up a little bit in this situation. Chaz could be in some trouble, definitely. But Blizzo also feeling a little bit scared without a touch of Karma, without Life Cocoon to really fall back on. Blizzo is a very exposed target right now.
Yeah, the pressure for Method Black is much higher than that of Wildcard Gaming, and they are not doing the Train the Druid strategy. They're playing much more conservatively and doing Death Grip stun swaps, which is better than just tunneling the Death Knight for sure. They need to spread pressure onto at least 2 targets so that Chaz has to move his Life Bloom around and expend more mana. Perhaps they can win on mana, but they're being overwhelmed right now. Looney gets gripped in. He pre-Life Cocoons the incoming stun, but then they just switch to Looney, having seen that defense activated. Good reaction from Method Black, forcing even more momentum on their side. If they can get a defensive way of the Crane, Looney's going to tap out his mana rapidly, and as soon as he's out, he can't access that huge damage increasing ability, and as soon as that happens, Method Black will just overwhelm them. Looney has a tough decision. Does he go for it? He would like to get it aggressively and defensively if he can, but he's just pulled away from the fight, caught in the stun, pre-fortifying Brew on that incoming attempt, then able to Transcendence out of the fight. We see Grapple Weapon kill attempt on Swapsy, but really not enough damage, and that's just the effectiveness the Druid brings in this matchup.
Yeah, and Swapsy actually running Death Pact as well, so at any point he can give himself some artificial health that could potentially keep him alive. Chaz has a moment to heal through a lot of that fake health that Swapsy will have available, and I think it's a good adaptation to keep himself alive. Chaz under fire with no trinket could be very vulnerable. He needs to try to escape. Looney just charging in. All 3 members of Wildcard Gaming trying to pressure down Method Black right now, overwhelm Chaz. He responds with the Iron Bark, still trying to kite away. Now Looney vulnerable, rolls away. Life Cocoon was used, and Looney will survive with that Life Cocoon, potentially having to run away. Swapsy getting swapped to, taking quite a bit of burst as well. Method Black falling behind a little bit here.
Yeah, finally Wildcard Gaming switching targets and building momentum for the team, but Looney's been maybe overstaying his welcome, playing quite aggressive, now able to Transcendence to safety. Blizzo could get swapped to. He's got cooldowns to trade though, and he should be gladly exchanging them. Want to see more attempts onto Chaz. He's definitely the vulnerable target for the team of Method Black before Dampening. Blizzo taking huge hits here from Method Black, opts to just trade Touch of Karma and make this risky situation no longer a risky one. Swapsy gets bursted with the 2 members of his team in crowd control unable to assist. No grapple weapon opportunity just yet. Looney playing it patient far off in the wings. I'm wondering when he's going to move in and try and execute for a kill. We've got an opportunity here with Chaz having no Gladiator's Medallion. If they can grip him in and get triple stun, Looney gets gripped in first. Method Black are going to secure Mana Rift on the end of that stun, trying to build a mana lead, but surprisingly, Looney is actually very far ahead and playing very smartly with his mana, holding on to Way of the Cranes, not using them on cooldown as we saw Colo and his team. Looney's just waiting for the perfect opportunity. If they can deny Chaz from regenerating mana, they could also win in the late game. Imprisonment onto the Way of the Crane. Looney trinkets, but he trinkets into a stun. Good denial by Raikou, a double stun as well. No Mana Rift to pair off, but this Way of the Crane will connect. Touch of Death has been committed as well. And Zeepai is going after Chaz, so they're trying to attack 2 targets at the same time. This way, Chaz has to make a tough decision on who he uses his Iron Bark on. Also has to spend a lot more mana healing 2 targets. Wildcard Gaming, they've established that mana lead. Now with just a little bit more coordination, I think they're going to take game 1.
Yeah, as long as Chaz isn't able to sneak away for a drink. Looney's been the main person shutting him down, and now Chaz actually recovering a lot of his mana. Mana Rift now secured onto Looney once again. And things are looking decently better for Method Black, although Chaz didn't get much of a drink there. If Wildcard Gaming can continue this pressure onto Swapsy, onto Raikou, and Chaz when he gets aggressive, this is going to be looking good for them. We've seen the Mistweaver out-mana these Druids in the past. That's definitely something favorable in this matchup for Wildcard Gaming. Looney just has to be able to survive a little bit longer. Good pressure here onto Swapsy. Grapple weapon denies a lot of his own healing. Looney getting swapped though, has to potentially run away on his Way of the Crane. That would be a disaster. Wants to get out as much damage and therefore as much healing as possible with that cooldown, but the imprisonment denies, and now Looney's in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, the imprisonments of Raikou have been key to their team staying in the fight as mana evens out at nothing with Dampening entering the battle. This is going to be ending soon, I do believe, and I would say that it's now more so in favor of Method Black as Looney attempts to make an escape. Chaz pushes forward, and Method Black look to reverse game 1 and swing it out of the park here. Looney trades Life Cocoon, managing to stay alive, nailing a double stun, triple crowd control as Wildcard Gaming continue to just struggle to get a kill. Raikou gets swapped to and bursted. He's got Darkness to exchange should he need it. Iron Bark appears to be enough. Looney trying to escape, gets stun locked. They actually use the grapple weapon on Raikou to deny the kill on Looney during that stun. Good mid-game adaptation, realizing that it's unlikely they're going to kill Swapsy anytime soon. They need to focus on just staying alive at this point, denying a lot of Raikou's damage. Swapsy now caught into a stun. Chaz gets interrupted. Good crowd control throughout Wildcard Gaming. Nice Ring of Peace on the follow-up cast. Paralysis to interrupt the next. Darkness has to be exchanged for that great crowd control chain that was initiated onto Chaz to deny a kill, and it's going to be a race to the finish here, and it's still too close to call.
Blizzo commits the Touch of Death and Touch of Karma. Swapsy getting lower. Chaz doesn't have any mana left to work with. That Life Cocoon for Looney is the safety net that potentially Wildcard Gaming really needs. Asphyxiate stun on Chaz into a paralysis. The crowd control sitting. Now Swapsy getting low. No Death Strike available. Is he going to be able to hold on? Wildcard Gaming looking to close out this game, make the final push. Take down Swapsy, but he's managed to stabilize. Death Strike now available without that grapple weapon, but Chaz just can't top him off.
I mean, Swapsy is really floundering here. Chaz has no mana, no defensive cooldown. Swapsy could fall at any moment here, but so could Blizzo, who will fall first. It looks to be Swapsy, and Wildcard Gaming take game number 1 over Method Black. I was starting to think that Method Black...
The side of the starting room, like if you go to the right, you can actually see to the right of Swapsy right now. You can actually position there as a Mistweaver and then teleport into the room. You also have double Ring of Peace, so you can potentially lock the door to that room with those Rings of Pieces, and you can actually kite fairly effectively still as a Mistweaver on this map.
Yeah, who is Method Black going to go after in this matchup? It looks like it could be Looney. Swapsy getting disarmed. Can't play too aggressive here. A lot of counter pressure coming in from Blizzo and Zeepai. Touch of Death gets activated. Chaz is forced to trinket out, throw out the Iron Bark to keep Swapsy afloat. And now Looney, he's in a lot of trouble. He's committed everything. Trinket, as well as his Fortifying Brew. Way of the Crane gets imprisoned. The only thing he has left is that very powerful Life Cocoon, but trading out everything so early on is looking scary for Wildcard Gaming.
Runes of Lordaeron, an aggressive pick selected here by Method Black, and it does appear to be that they want to put more pressure on Looney, although now it looks like he's able to escape to safety. Blizzo is getting cleaved down, and that's the main thing that you want to focus on if you're a melee cleave. You want to be attacking targets while walking to your primary one. So if Looney is the primary target, you attack Blizzo while moving your character towards Looney. You don't just stand still and attack Blizzo. This way you can make it difficult for Looney to avoid getting swapped to. He's going to have to move, which reduces his healing, and that's what we see right now from Method Black. But in the meantime, Wildcard Gaming pulled the trigger on an offensive push, gunning down Swapsy with a stun into a grapple. Great combo chain, but denied by Chaz's Iron Bark.
Yep, and Looney's looking very healthy now. He's able to stabilize. He has his port in a good position. You can see behind that little gravestone. I think he actually has it positioned even further away because that's Blizzo's Transcendence right there. So he's going to be able to port away, create a lot of distance when he needs to, and as long as Looney's playing safe, things are looking good already. Wildcard Gaming establishing a mana lead, although not huge. Still, that it will add up, especially later on in the game. Blizzo looking for some pressure onto Raikou and Swapsy, but outside of their offensive cooldowns, those offensive pushes, and the crowd control on Chaz, I think Swapsy and Raikou should be just fine.
Looney locked down in crowd control. Maybe looking to use Way of the Crane. I think it's likely that he's saving Mana Tea, which reduces the mana cost of his spells. Most importantly, that Way of the Crane, as it is so expensive. So Looney won't be able to Way of the Crane every minute, but he can every 1.5 minutes, and that's what he's waiting for. Playing more efficiently on mana and still banking that as a possible win condition later in the game. Looney definitely skill capped here on that Mistweaver. Now going for the kill, Way of the Crane grapple combo. Nice timing by Wildcard Gaming. Just a tiny bit more damage to put Swapsy over the edge, but it's not there. Chaz denies the kill once again.
Yeah, with the Iron Bark, but using a bit of mana as well. Looney falling a little bit behind. Mana Rift starting to add up for Raikou, and if they can consistently land these, it's going to be scary. Looney ports out. A little bit of a mistiming there for Raikou, unfortunately. Now a stun onto Chaz. Swapsy's still low. This could be the death pack. There's not a lot available. Darkness gets dropped out by Raikou, but still, desperation mode for Method Black. Very nice ring of peace from Blizzo. Forces Swapsy out of the safety of that darkness. As they make an attempt over on the Blizzo, he trinkets out. Life Cocoon gets traded out as well. Looney just looking to avoid as much damage as possible. He wants to keep his team aggressive here onto Swapsy.
It's a very back and forth series between these two teams. They have been competitive rivals for years now at this point. Wildcard Gaming, formerly XRB to the moon. Will they finally be able to break the curse and take Method Black out in the grand finals? They've just been unable to in the final stages of any tournament, and this is now a good opportunity for them to do so. They're so evenly matched. They've got good pressure here in game number 2. They might be moving up to game 3. They interrupt Chaz. Do they have anything afterwards? They need more. They've got the paralysis. Anti-magic shield denies a bit of damage for Swapsy. Chaz gets out of crowd control. Looney's pushing forward. I'm wondering if he's looking for a leg sweep. Ring of Peace to try and bounce Chaz in the fight. Chaz able to bounce to safety. Looney getting pulled back in. Way of the Crane, though, could be a huge push. Looney trinkets. They know they need to get a kill in this 10-second window. Can they get Swapsy down? 9 more seconds away from it. Doesn't look like they've got the damage to do it. 6 more. 5 more seconds away from it. Chaz is crowd controlled. They just need to connect. The grapple weapon denies the death strikes. They still got Chaz out of the fight for another second. They have to take him out. It doesn't look like they've got enough to do it. Swapsy getting healed now with those regrowths and stays alive once again.
Yeah, Death Strike regrowth will keep Swapsy relatively stable, but still not topped off. Looney forced to play a little bit defensive. Now Blizzo could be in some trouble. No Touch of Karma available. Life Cocoon gets traded out. He does have the Touch of Death, which he trades out onto Swapsy. Chaz responds with the Iron Bark immediately to slow down some of that burst damage. Leg sweep onto Swapsy. He trinkets out, wants to continue to use his Death Strike if he can. Now does not have that trinket available to get rid of this grapple weapon a little bit later on. Onto Swapsy, still burst damage coming in from Wildcard Gaming. A lot of pressure here from Raikou, establishing some decent counter pressure for his team onto Blizzo and Zeepai. At some point, they might have to run away in this matchup, and that's really the first time we've seen that in this game.
This could be the day for Wildcard Gaming to prevent the Method Black world domination that they try to secure every year in terms of points. Currently the highest point earners across the globe. Wildcard Gaming are in second place, really looking to overthrow the kings of that ladder. Can they do it? They're starting to fall behind to Method Black. Blizzo with limited options to stay alive, but on Ruins of Lordaeron, it's basically do or die. Very risky choice on Method Black's part, but it is going to put pressure on Wildcard Gaming as well.
Yeah, Method Black, they need to start getting some momentum in their favor. Against Wildcard Gaming today, they are down 0-4, so they can pick up this match. It's going to be very important for not only their score in this match, but morale, as it seems like Wildcard Gaming does have their number today.
Oh.
Double leg sweep coming in. Chaz caught in crowd control into a paralysis. Swapsy getting stunned up. Raikou denies with the darkness. Darkness is going to get denied with the Ring of Peace, but Swapsy's able to use his Death's Advance to get back into that safety of the darkness, avoid a lot of this incoming damage, and get stable.
All right, Choccy able to save that Death Advance for that critical moment to stay in darkness and immune the knockback effect of the Ring of Peace, which would have otherwise been checkmate for Method Black. Choccy's defense always solid. You can count on him for one thing in particular, that is to never die. But eventually he could be overwhelmed here with this composition that Wildcard Gaming have crafted to slaughter Death Knights. Blizzo gets counter pressured. Touch of Karma at very low health, redirecting the damage now onto Choccy. Chaz has to trade, but even still, he's almost completely tapped on mana. Touch of Death gets activated. Blizzo wants to get the kill here and now. Huge hit, all three members of Wildcard Gaming. They've got one more Way of the Crane push left in the mana tank. They could find a kill. They've got 30 seconds to do it. Maybe they don't even need the Way of the Crane. Choccy's gonna fall here in game number 2. Perfect execution, and if there was a day for Wildcard Gaming to take down Method Black.
Wildcard Gaming is trying to get on match point here. We're in the grand final for EU, 120 points on the line. It is a best of 7 as we enter Ashmane's Fall.
Now the Pumpers who took the tournament last weekend play a very similar composition with a Warrior instead of a Windwalker, and changed my mind when Poike's team was able to eliminate them in the offline rounds. And when I spoke to Valet, he said the main reason they were able to do that is that they improved their Rogue Mage to overcome that Warrior Death Knight. Now the Windwalker might be a bit better than the Warrior in this specific matchup, but it is a similar parallel in that matchup, and I'm very curious to see if Waz can be the X factor for his team.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think we've seen Waz on Rogue for quite some time, so definitely a pleasant surprise, a welcome change. Polymorph now secured onto Looney. Blizzo could be in some trouble, activating the Touch of Karma. Wants to continue this offensive push onto Raikou. Chaz actually looking for a lot of Cyclones in this matchup, has exposed himself to a paralysis. This could easily be the first Ice Block from Raikou.
Temporal Shield seconds away from bouncing Raikou back to full health, and there it is. Raikou healed back up to safety. Maledict attempt here onto Blizzo. Windwalker's definitely not a big fan of being a target
nice
against
interrupt.
Rogue Mage. Perfect timing by Raikou. It's almost like Method Black have never even stepped off their Rogue Mage, having seen so much Demon Hunter Death Knight from them. Blizzo in the meantime portaling over, trying to deny Chaz from drinking. Waz gets swapped too. Good swap here by Looney and Zeepai, trying to create pressure in multiple places and throw Chaz for a loop. Now we see a swap onto Looney by Method Black. Both teams really throwing big curveballs.
Yeah, Waz using his Shadow Step. Zeepai realizing with his Death Grip, able to take Waz away from Looney, keeping him nice and safe, nice and healthy. And I like what Looney did there. He got interrupted, really reducing the amount of healing that he had available. Blizzo was in trouble, so he disactivated the Way of the Crane, and that way he can move in, use his melee abilities like the Rising Sun Kick and the Blackout Kick to get out the healing that he needs. So if he ever does get interrupted, having that as a safety net, definitely important. Waz could be in some trouble now. Full Polymorph once again secured by Raikou. He has been doing a good job so far, making sure he's at least landing some crowd control as Looney's forced to trinket out of the blind.
Ooh.
Now suscepting himself to, or very susceptible to that interrupt, as Raikou does nail one once again, but looks like Looney should be able to recover and keep Blizzo alive.
I think the big difference right now is Looney's mana. He's basically full and Chaz is already down to half. So if Wildcard Gaming can stay on top of that and deny Chaz from regenerating it, I think they're going to be able to take this, and then Method Black may need to make another adaptation. And one thing we saw from North America yesterday was the Mew Mew Kitty Cats running that Paladin, and they were doing all-in strategies to kill the Windwalker, using the Blessing of Protection to remove the Touch of Karma. That might end up being maybe something that Method Black should consider, at least in this matchup. But then when they lock it in blind, they'll be so easily countered by Wildcard Gaming. It's going to be a very difficult series for Method Black overall. I wouldn't say that they've necessarily even got this game in the bag, and if they even manage to win it, they've got 2 swing matches they have to win. This is looking like Wildcard Gaming's day, unless their bad luck curse takes them down.
Yeah, Touch of Death as well as one Maledict being used by Blizzo onto Raikou, basically trying to solo him down at this point. Chaz denies with the Iron Bark as Zeepai just pressuring down Chaz. They really want to play into their win condition, which could potentially be mana in this matchup, especially if Looney can hold on to that precious mana bar and Chaz is forced to heal multiple targets. It's definitely going to be disastrous for Method Black. There's a small opening here. Blizzo with no trinket could potentially go down in a stun, but with this Fortifying Brew and Touch of Karma and being an Orc, I think it's unlikely they find the damage to take him down 100-0.
All right, Waz gets swapped here. There's pressure in multiple places, and look at Chaz's mana. Basically nothing. Full stun secured. Looney putting pressure on Chaz. Icy Veins gets popped. Raikou's trying to make a play. How much damage can he get out here is the question. They have to kill Blizzo 100-0 in 2 more seconds. 1 more second, they get denied. Zeepai's anti-magic zone saving Blizzo, allowing him to stabilize, and now it is go time. You've got such a huge mana lead. Wildcard Gaming need to play right on top of Method Black and just push them over.
Yeah, Touch of Karma gets used by Blizzo, potentially a little preemptive there. Looney wasn't in any crowd control, so might have been able to top him off, and I really feel like Method Black's damage did fall down, but we'll have to see if that pays off for them. Waz getting swapped too, as Chaz does stabilize the whole team, and I think Chaz actually sat down for a little bit of a drink there. Kidney shot secured on Zeepai. He used the Icebound Fortitude. Now he is a vulnerable target in this matchup potentially as well. Raikou once again trying to deny the kill with the Temporal Shield, manages to do so, and he's been doing a great job in this matchup so far with Chaz, making sure they're perfectly rotating their defensive cooldowns anytime Wildcard Gaming is getting a good offensive push, and they have been able to hold on to those precious ice blocks for quite some time.
Double stun, wave the crane, interrupt secured, cross crowd control. It's looking good here for Wildcard Gaming. They get an ice block. They grip Chaz into the fight to try and mix it up and catch him off guard, then paralysis on his escape to switch targets to Waz to put even more pressure into the fight. Zeepai definitely an exposed target, but before Dampening, is he really going to go down? Raikou now getting Maledict from the team of Wildcard Gaming. Multiple. Touch of Death about to explode. Chaz gets Ring of Peace on his cast and stacked up onto the team. This could be devastating. Raikou potentially still on hypothermia, desperately blinking to safety in midfield. Temporal Shield well timed once again, but look at Chaz's mana in a very bad state. Maledict attempt, but now onto Zeepai. Can they take him down without Dampening? Will he fall? Life Cocoon appears to be enough. They managed to at least crush through it. Chaz is looking like he wants to try and drink, but it's going to be an ice block for mana if he really wants to be able to make that. I'm not even sure if he's going to. Raikou gets stun locked. Zeepai connects. Blizzo moves over. Zeepai gets deflected for now. Surprising not to see him trinket and get a kill. They get the second block regardless, and now Wildcard Gaming have all the major objectives out of the way and still have the mana lead. And are they going to be able to just completely clean sweep Method Black? 7-0 total in the day?
It's definitely looking like a possibility. This matchup is definitely going their way. Currently 5-0 against Method Black in their 2 series today. Blizzo does manage to get the Fortifying Brew off, wants to remain tanky and not take too much damage from the thorns that Chaz has put onto Raikou. Raikou with a beautiful Temporal Shield once again before the leg sweep, keeps him alive, but Waz getting swapped to, in a lot of trouble. Fist of Fury, evasion still available, but he's holding on to it. Wants to sort of bait Zeepai and Blizzo to attack him, and if he gets too low, he can trade out the evasion to stay alive, and that buys Raikou a little bit of time to get topped off from some of the heal over time effects Chaz has. But Sid, Chaz with no mana left, what is he going to do?
I mean, he's not really going to do a lot. Raikou is just getting gunned down. All they have to do is stay on target, grip Raikou back into the fight, interrupt him on every cast, double stun lock. This should be a closed game at this point. Iron Bark is the last thing standing in their way, but even that doesn't appear to be enough as Zeepai tries to push him over the edge, and Raikou holds on by a thread. Temporal Shield now available. He manages to escape and at least stay alive, but staying alive is not going to be enough to put a win on the board, which they desperately need unless they want to be put on match point already. Wildcard Gaming just smacking Method Black around here today. Touch of Death rolling. Blizzo's trying to gun for a kill. Waz is low health as well. Blizzo gets cycloned. Good denial at least of some damage during this window of time. Chaz still with no mana left. They drop the Frozen Orb. Raikou tries to make something happen out of nothing, but there's just no damage to back it up. Waz is getting cleaved down. Method Black definitely have great survival instincts to be able to even stay alive to this point. I'm still looking for an opening. They've maybe found one with a polymorph secured by Raikou. Can they sneak it in?
Yeah, they definitely could. Blizzo's very vulnerable, and Waz, he actually has a Vendetta. Raikou has to hold on a little bit longer. Temporal Shield is used with the Iron Bark. I think Raikou can stay alive, and now Blizzo, he's in a lot of trouble. Looney with no trinket. If he gets polymorph, easily Blizzo could fall. Can Method Black do it? Blizzo has to hold on another 2 seconds for his Touch of Karma. If he can connect that to Raikou, he's going to be feeling relatively healthy. He holds on, but if he gets caught in a stun, still danger time for Wildcard Gaming.
And it's just going to be it. Raikou gets crushed, but Blizzo can get cross-killed with 1 more second left on that polymorph. Do they have any?
They are making this look like a rest day. Wildcard Gaming just needs 1 more to take the grand final.
All right, here we go, everybody. This is it. Can Wildcard Gaming break the curse? 7-0 against Method Black in the day if they manage to pull off this potentially final game. Method Black are desperate. They went back to their Rogue Mage roots. That didn't work. All right, let's break out Swapsy Destruction Warlock, see if a Wizard Cleave can be enough to deal with Wildcard Gaming. But we've already seen that Wildcard Gaming knows how to manage their mana into the late game using the Mana Tea with Way of the Crane for big pushes. And they also know how to just avoid a fight until they have the opportunity to find victory. So it's up to Method Black Black to find a way to end this game. Maybe a counter kill right at the final seconds. A game of chicken as Wildcard Gaming push forward to try and get the final blow. They then reverse it and kill Wildcard Gaming amidst their push. And I think it's going to be that risky decision making that Method Black will have to employ to find victory here against Wildcard Gaming.
Yep, and this is a strategy that we saw the Pumpers implement against Method Black, is just sit back, relax, wait for dampening, and then eventually, as that cleave, you can make that offensive push and really push through a lot of that Restoration Druid healing, and you really can't blame them at this point. I think Raikou and Swapsy, they're really difficult targets to take down, especially during these earlier stages of the game. Looney, susceptible to crowd control. If they do manage to land polymorph, into fear, Blizzo or Zeepai could definitely go down. So it's not exactly a favorable trade for Wildcard Gaming early on, but later on, when Swapsy's self-healing is limited, or when Swapsy just pushes in and very offensive in a position like this is a chance for Wildcard Gaming to get really aggressive.
Yeah, Wildcard Gaming going for a kill early on here against Method Black. Is Swapsy going to choke? Are they going to fall? Is this Wildcard Gaming's day to finally take victory in the European region? Swapsy looks to reverse the pressure, dropping those Infernals, popping the Unending Resolve to go aggressive. It's a game of chicken at this point, but Swapsy is boldly going for it, connects one Chaos Bolt, not able to find a second. Way of the Crane completely nullifies that attempt from Swapsy. Now catching a Polymorph, unfortunately breaking a bit early. Unending Resolve and Iron Bark have already been used. If Wildcard Gaming can stay on target, Swapsy might fall early.
Yeah, definitely. Swapsy jumping down from that little platform, but Wildcard Gaming, they got what they wanted. If you look, Swapsy, his Unending Resolve, it's a 3-minute cooldown. Blizzo waits for your Touch of Death. Guess what? It's a 2-minute cooldown, so that's going to give you an opportunity when those cooldowns aren't lined up, and that's when Wildcard Gaming can get really aggressive. You just wait for the Way of the Crane, you wait for the Touch of Death, you make an offensive push once again, and that's when you can overwhelm some of that Restoration Druid healing. And the Method Black, when Swapsy pushes in and trades out those defensives and offensive cooldowns, Wildcard Gaming is in a situation where they thrive.
All right, let's see how Wildcard Gaming want to navigate it here. They got one major objective, but before dampening, maybe they don't want to risk it. Maybe they just want to save mana, wait for the late game, and then just finish the job against Method Black. And this is where we've seen Wildcard Gaming in a position where they just one win away from being able to take out Method Black, and it just slips away. And maybe it's off the back of them playing overly defensive and overly cautious. It may just be the case that they need to go all out and find a kill. It's a matter of finding the timing on that push. They definitely need to push, but timing it is going to be key, and right now they're a bit reluctant, and that early advantage that they established is slipping away if they continue to decide to do nothing.
I mean, are they really doing nothing? They're sitting back, they're not attacking.
They're doing nothing.
I mean, they're doing nothing except biding their time to a point in the match where they have more of an advantage. So, I mean, by sitting back and doing nothing, they're actually accomplishing their goal and playing into their win condition, in my opinion. Method Black has to be the one that has to play a little bit aggressive, but it needs to be Raikou. I just think Swapsy is way too susceptible to swaps. No pun intended with his name, but if he gets gripped in and swapped to, that's when these favorable trades go in favor of Wildcard Gaming. It needs to be Raikou that moves in, gets the Blizzard, gets the Frozen Orb. But this little platform with the way they're positioned, it's really hard for Raikou to even get that rolling. And yeah, Wildcard Gaming, they're playing it out intelligently. We've said in the past that they've sort of tripped on the finish line against Method Black. Right now, they're 6-0 against Method Black for the day. They want to win this cup. It'll be the first cup that they win this season, I believe. So definitely really important for their team.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how it plays out. I mean, Method Black may have flashbacks against the Pumpers, and deep in Dampening, it was Drainer's team that was able to overcome adversity and run them over in Dampening. So because of powerful cooldowns like Anti-Magic Shield and Touch of Karma, Wildcard Gaming can effectively immune the magic damage that is in the composition of Method Black, and while they are immune, they run them over with pressure and high mobility and support, with all three members adding in that Way of the Crane. So Wildcard Gaming are just going to wait for the ultimate dampening push and try to end this with one swift strike. Although right now their actions don't look very swift. They're playing it patiently, cautiously, lining it up, and then going to be gunning down for the win. And if they can manage to do it, they'll 7-0 Method Black, which is basically unprecedented. I don't think Method Black have been destroyed this hard ever.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a fair statement. Raikou moving in, he basically needs to be the person to soak up a lot of this damage in this matchup, as he has Shimmer in order to escape, whereas Swapsy, he doesn't have that luxury. If he goes in, he's stuck. Not a lot of mobility options there for Swapsy. I'd actually like to see him position his gateway, and he did. If you look at the front of this little platform, there is the gateway, and that's where Choccy can basically use that as a get-out-of-jail-free card. If they do grip him in, he can always go back to the gateway to at least escape a little bit and create some distance, but Wildcard Gaming, they are not afraid to play this out to the late game. They want to wait, but the question is, what is the right moment for them to push forward and actually try to start getting pressure? Because if you wait too late, Choccy might be able to find an opportunity to really overwhelm you with the Unending Resolve, the Infernals, the Dark Soul. Things can get really dicey against the Destruction Warlock.
Oh, it's going to be a game of chicken, and if Wildcard Gaming are afraid whatsoever or show any signs of weakness, then they could be overwhelmed during their push. So they've come all the way to this final point. They're going to play it out until the absolute last moment that they possibly can. And it isn't to say that they're even guaranteed victory at that point. They can't afford to slip up whatsoever with that final push. Currently, Choccy and Raikou are closing in. Choccy on the right and Raikou on the left. They've got Wildcard Gaming surrounded. Finally, some triangle positioning on the part of Method Black. I really think they need to realize deeper into Dampening that big wave push could overwhelm them. We do see Wildcard Gaming going for an attack here as Dampening ramps in. Touch of Death activated, desperately trying to pull powerful defensives. They get Iron Bark and immediately evacuate. One cooldown out of the way. Now they'll play safe and look for another opportunity later on.
We only saw Choccy, by the way, play Lock twice last year. Both times Affliction, both times an L.
Both times a loss, so not necessarily the highest win rate, but Choccy in desperation mode coming in, playing this composition that they think might potentially work. That last exchange actually wasn't too bad. Blizzo committed his Touch of Death, and Chaz really only using the Iron Bark to keep him alive. Although he doesn't have a trinket, so potentially they could be waiting for Looney with the paralysis, with the leg sweep. That's a nice little crowd control chain that Wildcard Gaming has available to make a push onto Choccy. But now, Choccy, Raikou, they're positioning far away. They don't want to be exposed to getting death gripped in, getting susceptible to damage. Chaz just going to sit down and drink, looking for a reset, as we are at 17% dampening.
Basically, this game is going to play out for a 10-second period of time where anything can happen. And during that 10-second period of time, it could be foreshadowing for the Super Frogs versus Never Lucky series, as both those teams have similar compositions on their rosters. And depending on who ends up coming out ahead, could dictate the North American region as well. This Mistweaver, Windwalker, Death Knight composition has been quite potent since the recent Restoration Druid changes on focused growth. And now with Dampening at 20% and ramping, we do see Wildcard Gaming looking like they want to initiate an assault. Good crowd control, but Choccy preemptively gates to safety right before the stun lock, denying an attempt by Wildcard Gaming.
Wildcard Gaming is very non-committal right now. They get the gateway from Choccy. They don't chase him whatsoever. They seem to really want to just sit on this platform for as long as possible. But like I said, things can fall apart quite quickly here for Wildcard Gaming as well. You sit back for too long not doing much can definitely be scary. Choccy getting gripped in, and this is a perfect position. Blizzo commits the Touch of Death, and now Choccy, with no gateway, could be in a lot of trouble. Chaz used the Iron Bark and the Thorns to try to redirect some of this damage, reduce it. Choccy might have to trade out the Unending Resolve. Good Ring of Peace there by Blizzo, slowing down some of the healing coming in from Chaz as he's caught into a paralysis. Choccy doesn't want to be too greedy with this Unending Resolve. He's getting lower. Chaz gets gripped. Choccy finally committing it, putting out a little bit of counter pressure if he can, but this is looking real good for Wildcard Gaming.
I mean, Choccy's on the ropes here. He has nothing left, whereas Wildcard Gaming have many options to trade, and when they go for a push even deeper into Dampening, what is Chaz really going to do other than throw his hands up in the air? He's not going to have any opportunities. In the meantime, Raikou tries to move in, gets a triple Frozen Orb with a spell lock backed up by Choccy. I think Method Black have realized if they don't get aggressive and get a kill, they might just lose. Double interrupt combo by Method Black as they desperately try to put a point on the board. Denied on the kill, but at least showing signs of life here in game number 4. Will they go down 7-0? Infernals have landed. Choccy wants to get a kill, gets denied on it with the leg sweep. Can they keep these Chaos Bolts from coming? Now they try to retreat across the map, but Zeepai, he's a Death Knight. He doesn't move as fast. They left him behind. He's trying to march his way around the side of the balcony, but these Chaos Bolts, Ring of Peace, denies one. Choccy goes for another, gets at least one, snaring Zeepai up, but now able to duck around the corner. And now with the Infernal threat out of the way, if I'm Wildcard Gaming, this game's in the bag.
Yep, you've got the Way of the Crane, you've got Touch of Death coming up in 28 seconds. That is the moment where Wildcard Gaming could potentially close out this game. Choccy positioning very far away on top of his gateway as all three members of Wildcard Gaming charge in. Looney caught into a polymorph. There could be trouble time here onto Zeepai. Has the anti-magic shell. Choccy getting bursted down. Caught do a full stun. Chaz commits the Ironbark Thorns to keep Choccy alive. Great counter pressure here onto Zeepai. It's a race to the finish. Choccy getting lower. He's getting interrupted. Looney moving in, looking for crowd control. Nails the leg sweep onto Chaz. He's forced to trinket out. Now Choccy in a lot of trouble with the touch. Maledix, Wildcard Gaming, can they really 4-0 Method Black? And yes, they will. 7-0 on the day, claiming cup number 4.
That's how dominant Wildcard Gaming was on the day. They play Method Black twice, and they take them down without dropping a single game. And if you look a little bit further back as well, did Wildcard